This is Spencer, and this is LycanhoodReads. Today we're going to be doing a dual review of Hall of Smoke. It's by H.M. Long. I believe it's Hannah M. Long. And we're going to be doing To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. I think I'm going to do Hall of Smoke first. So I read this in February. I've been really looking forward to this book. Since like the fall, I think, is when I discovered it was coming out. It was on a bunch of like most anticipated releases of 2021 sort of videos. And it's one of the first like standalone fantasies to come out this year. It came out on January 16th, I think, 16th or 19th. And it's a debut. It's H.M. Long's debut, Hall of Smoke. So I'll start out by saying that I liked this book. I liked it, but it was very different than what I went into it expecting. So I went in expecting like, I probably would have done this like a 5-star prediction. I thought I was gonna love it. But I think I was so thrown off by it being different than what I had anticipated, that I didn't enjoy it quite as much as I thought I was going to, and I don't really like using the star ratings, but I liked it, but I didn't love it. I'd probably give it like a 3, 3.5, something like that. I'm going to do a video where I talk about how I feel about star ratings, so you guys won't take the stars that I give things too seriously. But anyway, so this is a Viking-esque, sort of Norse-inspired, Viking-inspired, epic fantasy standalone. And it's an adult fantasy, but it's from a first-person POV, which always gives me YA vibes. I don't know why that is. I've been reading mostly adult fiction for the last, 4 or 5 years. Adult science fiction and fantasy. And all that stuff is mostly in third-person POV. So it's like when I go into a book and it's first-person, it sort of throws me back. And it makes me feel like it's more YA than maybe it really is. But I definitely got some more YA vibes from this book. The main character, I think, is in her late teens, early 20s, like 19 or 20. I can't be sure. They don't really keep up. They're not super concerned with exact ages in this book. But, so yeah, first person perspective. And so, at the beginning of this book, this girl, she is a warrior priestess who serves and worships a goddess of war in this fictional world. It's not, they don't worship the Norse gods, but it's definitely sort of inspired by that. You can feel that vibe, and that's something I really liked about it. It was probably my favorite thing about this book was the gods and goddesses and like the pantheon and all that legendary creation myth sort of stuff. Excellent world building in that case. But yeah, so she's a warrior priestess for this world's goddess of war, and this comes with certain privileges, magical powers. The powers aren't super well defined. They call it the fire, and she can like look at you within like aim this fire at you. This fire, and it can like melt your eyeballs or like melt your face or your brain or something. Like people drop dead from this sort of thing. So it's a pretty good superpower. It's a pretty good superpower, and I'm going to talk more later about how this superpower is awesome and totally underutilized in this book. But she's outcast. I'm not going to say why, but she is outcast at the beginning of this book from her clan and her family, and she's trying to regain the favor of her goddess. But something happens, this big thing happens, and her world, her clan, her life is thrown completely into turmoil. And that's what gets the ball rolling with this book, is like her people have been enslaved, and there's like a war going on. Her goddess disappears, and so this thing that she's relied on for her whole life, this god that she has relied on for her whole life, and everyone she knows relies on, has disappeared, and she's not answering prayers. She's just not showing up for the job. You know what I mean? And So our girl has to go on a quest to not only regain the goddess's favor, because she's still out of favor with her, but also to just discover like what's going on and how she can best serve and save her people. That's what this whole book is it's a quest story, journey, lots of journeying and traveling in this book. And it's what I really loved about this book. I loved the gods and goddesses and all that mythos, but what I really loved about it was the way it questioned fate and like the nature and importance of faith, because our main character struggles, you guys, like big time struggles with her faith, because she is devoted. She's devoted and she wants nothing more than to please this goddess. But this goddess keeps letting her down. Like she has her own problems. There's something going on in the pantheon. There's something wrong. There's a war. And as our main character like learns more about her goddess, about all the gods, where they came from, how they work, who is in power, she has to start questioning, well, is my goddess worth worshiping? Really? Like, and that's sort of her big dilemma in the whole book is this person worthy of my people's admiration and devotion? And I think that's so much, like, in the best way. Like, it's so much. And faith is not something we talk about enough in, like, books, or at least not in, I guess what I mean to say is in fantasy books. And I think fantasy is such a perfect and safe place to discuss something like that. And this book does it really, really well. Because you just, and with her, you're just like, I don't know, girl, this seems sketchy, you know? This is starting to seem sketchy, and like maybe you should give up on her, on your goddess, on your fate. And she does not want to. She does not want to at all. And I can't say whether or not that's the correct decision or not, necessarily. But it's got all the badass elements. I had come to this book thinking it had queer elements for some reason. I think I just got my wires crossed at some point. I was probably looking up so many like anticipated queer releases of 2021 and so many fantasy releases of 2021 that I probably just thought that it was gay when it's not. That's what happens when you read too much fan fiction, kids. You start thinking everything is gay. Yeah, it's a hazard, but there's no queer rep in this, well, not blatantly anyway, but also, good news, there's no romance in this either, which is so rare, and we need less romance in general. It's way overvalued, I think. Like, I love a good romance as much as the next person, but sometimes so much of the time, really, it's forced. And this book spares us from that. She's too busy. Our girl is way too busy for romance. And she suffers and so much of this book and so much of her character is about grief. You know, I'm not in love with the main character. I didn't feel like a really close connection to her. But I think that's because so much of her character is wrapped up in grief and like desperation. Because we meet her at a time in her life where she's like lost everything, literally everything. So it's hard to get to know someone under those circumstances, right? And she changes from the person that she was before she lost everything into the person she is at the end of this book. So it's understandable that I don't feel like I really got to know her very well, but grief is a big part of this book, and I like the way that the grief was handled as well. It pops up. Those emotions pop up at the most inopportune moments. At the most inopportune moments, and she's just like, oh shit, I can't think about this right now. And that's so true, because she's too busy. She's too busy for romance, and she's too busy for grief, which is heartbreaking. What else can I say about this here? So if you're coming to this for the gods, it's definitely going to deliver on that front. Definitely going to deliver on like this struggle of belief and faith and devotion to to a god, but also I think you could look at it like to an institution, to a way of life, because not only is she devoted to her god, but she's devoted to her culture and her people who are so steeped in their religion. So if you're coming to it for like all those vibes, it totally delivers on that. It delivers on like the Viking vibe too. I was expecting something a little different because I hear the word Viking and I'm thinking like the show Vikings, right? So I'm thinking like boats and like voyages and pillaging. And there is pillaging, no doubt. There's pillaging, but there aren't any boats. I'm not sure wherever she is mostly landlocked. There's a coast and a sea on this map, but we never go there. Not in this book. I think this book leaves a lot of room for sequels, for sure. It's supposed to be a standalone, but the author could definitely come back here if she wanted to, and I wouldn't mind that. I would be interested. But we don't go to the coast. So there's not sailing, there's not voyaging, but there are axes, there are animal companions, there are gods talking to you in your dreams, there are, what else there are horses, there are gods like battling each other, there's lots of description of like clothing and armor. I'll just say that I did have complaints about some things in this book, mostly like the way it wraps up, like towards the end, and just some things that didn't quite make sense to me. It's like, I mentioned her superpower earlier, and I felt like her superpower was underutilized, and it would sort of just disappear for the effect of plot sometimes, or it would be like weakened for plot, which is fine. You know, we have to make concessions, but overall, good book, good standalone fantasy. It's a pretty quick read. Let me see. It's a little over 400 pages. Quick read. Good for like transitioning from YA fantasy, because like I said, it's in first person point of view, and it is epic fantasy, but it doesn't have that really heavy feel that some epic fantasies have. Yeah, that's All Smoke by H.M. Long. Next, I want to talk about To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. Guys, I loved this. This is technically a novella, I think. It's not very long. 138 pages, pretty short. I think that qualifies as a novella, but whatever you call it, it's good. It's good. It's a little science fiction novella, and I'm gonna call it like realistic science fiction. Like, maybe that's a stretch, because they're definitely living in like it's the future. I forget which year it is, but it's like 200 years from now. But it does feel very realistic, and there's a whole interview in the back of my copy with Becky Chambers, and her mom is an astrophysicist or something like that, something with the word astro in front of it. So she consulted on this book to like make it as scientifically accurate and, you know, realistic as possible, and I definitely got that. And something you guys might not know about me is that I love that sort of thing. I love when books or shows, it doesn't happen as much in shows, but when books have like realistic science fiction, or like they really dig into the sciencey aspects of what's going on. Something that does that, or something that turned me on to that, was Dark Matter by Blake Cronch. I'm not sure how to say his last name, but Dark Matter is like that. The Sleeping Giants trilogy, or the Themis Files is what it's technically called, is excellent at that. That's part of why I love that trilogy so much. I might do a review of that trilogy, even though I've read it already, because I just love talking about it. So just make a whole video talking about it. But this felt very reminiscent of the Themis Files, Sleeping Giants. And also a movie called Interstellar. I don't remember what year that came out. It might have been like 2016 or 15. But it's got Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. And it's very good. I don't like the way that movie ends. I'll say that. And I know that's like a bummer, but it's a long movie, and I still like it even though I don't like the ending. And it's very much like this, where I should probably tell you what it's about. So this is about a team of scientists traveling to different planets outside of our solar system that we suspect can sustain life. Now, I know we've heard that story before. That's like the story, right? But they're not really traveling there to colonize or to like find a place for humanity to go. It's more so that they just want to learn. So like this book is about nerds. It's about science nerds. And they are traveling there just to learn, just to study, and then to return to Earth. And Interstellar is a story about going and finding somewhere else for humanity to go. But it's still a lot of the same vibes where they visit multiple planets, one of which is made almost entirely of water, which I remember Interstellar does that as well. So if you're a fan of, I'll just say, if you're a fan of Interstellar, even if you didn't like the end, read this book. It's short. It's like that. It's like Interstellar, but the ending doesn't suck. So there you go. The main character this has great queer rep here, you guys. Queer rep right here. Becky Chambers. The main character is bisexual, I think. She doesn't like put a label on it, and I don't really want to label her, but she has a relationship with a male identifying person and a female identifying person over the course of the book. So bisexual maybe, undefined maybe, doesn't matter. She's queer. And then there's also an Ace character. One of the crew members is Ace. And if I'm reading it correctly, which I'm pretty sure I am because I read it like 4 times just to make sure, is a trans male character. And I love him. So you got all kinds of representation in these little 138 pages. And it's not what the book's about, right? So they don't go on and on about it. Like I said, especially with the trans character and the Ace character too, it's subtle. Like they mention it maybe once or twice. Cause it's not what the book's about. It's not even what the characters are about at this point. It's just sort of, hey, this is what's happening. Look, there's science, which is cool. I think that's more what we need, the kind of representation we need. I love like in your face queer rep. I like rom-com-y, YA books that's like, hey, this is gay. I'm excited about that. But I like this sort of stuff too. And I think this is more of what we need to make it normal, to make it more accessible. And to just normalize queer rep all across media, really. It doesn't need to be about being gay. It's just about people who may happen to be gay or trans or ace or whatever it is. So this is done really well here in Becky Chambers one. But it's so good, and I don't know what much more to say about it. I love the worlds that they visit. It's so beautifully painted. She really takes her time to like imagine these places and what they would be like and what they would look like and feel like and smell like, and the sort of creatures they might have. And it's just fascinating, and I love science fiction like this. And if you love science fiction like this too, that's sort of down, sedated, I guess, is maybe, like, it's not giant space battles and spaceships. It's not Star Wars, right? It's something else. It's something more down to earth, something more realistic, something that feels very much so in our future. And I love that. So highly recommend this. It's a quick little read and reread. You'll probably want to reread it. I do. It made me want to watch Interstellar, but the ending to Interstellar pissed me off, so I'm probably not going to watch it. I will say that this ending is sort of a bit like a cliffhanger. I want to compare it to, there's a short story by Frank K. Stockton called The Lady and the Tiger. I read it way back in middle school. We were assigned to read it because it's a cliffhanger. Anyone that's read it knows what I mean. It ends with like this open-ended, you have to make the decision sort of thing. Like you have to decide how that story turned out, which maybe all stories sort of in that way, in an existential sort of vibe. But But this is like that, where it ends off and it's like, now you decide. And some people hate that, so I will warn you that it does that. But, and yeah, it's a cliffhanger, but I didn't feel like I was hanging off a cliff. I felt like, of course, this is how it went, you know? Like, and I don't know, I felt like it was a good way to wrap up the story. I love A Lady and the Tiger. I kind of like having to imagine my own ending for it and like not getting to know, because that's so much of like how life is sometimes, is you don't get to know. But yeah, that's To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. Love the title, by the way. They don't tell you what the title means until the end, unless you already know, in which case you're probably a nerd. So anyway, those are my reviews for Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long and To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. Both great reads. I read them in February. I might have read Hall and Smoke in January. I don't remember. But yeah, early 2021. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.